I've broken down these details in such a way that they'll leave you shocked. And trust me, you'll only understand the full theory if you watch till the very end, because today I'm about to connect Avengers Endgame to a hidden catastrophe that no one saw coming. A catastrophe that could very well explain Avengers Doomsday itself. And it all starts with one line Tony Stark said in Endgame: "If we mess with time, then time will mess with us." What if that wasn't just a warning, but a prophecy that the Avengers themselves accidentally set into motion? And here's my burning question for you. Agatha consumes Latvaria's tyrant. The people cheer, they see Doom as their liberator. But deep inside, Victor doesn't feel like a hero. He feels like a man who has lost everything twice. This is the turning point. Up to now, Victor was still someone who could have been saved. He was a boy who wanted to protect, who wanted to give. But grief twists even the noblest souls. In his rage, he convinces himself that only by seizing absolute power can he prevent such losses from happening again. And so he doesn't just rule Latvaria, he rebuilds it in his image. He fuses magic with technology, creating the first wave of Doombots. Machines powered by energy not from this world, but siphoned from forbidden realms. The land prospers, but its prosperity is built on unstable foundations. And that's when a familiar figure notices the Ancient One. The Ancient One feels a disturbance. She confronts Doom, warning him that his experiments are destabilizing the natural balance. She senses that the energy he's tapping into could unravel the very fabric of their universe. But Doom, emboldened by grief and power, mocks her. He calls her a hypocrite. After all, isn't she herself guilty of drawing energy from the dark dimension to prolong her life? Their clash is inevitable. Sorcerer Supreme against Latvaria's armored sorcerer engineer. And though the Ancient One is formidable, Doom does something no one else ever dared. He doesn't just fight her. He absorbs her power, just as he once absorbed Agatha's teachings. For the first time in centuries, the Ancient One finds herself outmatched, not by brute force, but by a mind that combines logic with mysticism. Unable to destroy him without devastating consequences, she leaves him with a warning. "If you ever step outside Latvaria, our next meeting will be our last." Doom's reply is chilling in its certainty. Indeed, it will be our last. Meanwhile, in the broader world, Steve Rogers is living a quieter life. His intervention created a strange peace. With Hydra dismantled early, with Doom locked away in Latvaria, governments stabilize, wars fade. Conflicts that once birthed heroes never come to pass. It's almost idyllic, almost too good to be true. But this peace isn't natural, it's the product of Steve's interference. And when Peggy Carter eventually passes away, Steve feels the pull of his original This is where Doom's genius turns into obsession. He refuses to accept that the multiverse itself is broken because of someone else's choices. He tells himself he can fix it. He builds machines. He crafts spells. He sends Doombots into other realms to harvest energy. But no matter what he does, the incursions keep happening. Timelines collapse, universes burn, and slowly Doom arrives at a terrifying conclusion that the multiverse isn't a garden to be nurtured, but a cancer to be replaced, to siphon energy from other realms. These machines, half metal and half magic, act as anchors, patching the cracks left by Steve's departure. But here's the problem. Every time one fracture is sealed, another appears elsewhere. It's like playing whack-a-mole with existence itself. Doom begins to notice a strange pattern. No matter what he does, the source of instability always traces back to one thing: Steve Rogers. Not the Captain America of Doom's timeline, but the Steve who came from another world, who lived decades of borrowed time with Peggy before finally returning home. Doom realizes something devastating. Steve wasn't just a visitor, he was an infection in the timeline. His presence created peace where there should have been conflict. And when he left, that peace collapsed, sending shockwaves through the multiverse. For Doom, this isn't just a theory, it's proof that destiny itself was rewritten, and he's living in the fallout. Armed with this revelation, Doom turns his attention to the concept of dream walking, the forbidden practice of projecting oneself into variants across the multiverse. Using fragments of the Darkhold in his own inventions, he sends his consciousness spiraling into alternate worlds. In one, he sees Howard Stark alive and well, never betrayed, never killed in Latvaria. In another, Tony grows into Iron Man, the genius hero who saves New York from an alien invasion instead of hiding in armor and sorcery. Each reality shows him a different possibility, a different outcome. And yet, one thing remains constant: the incursions. No matter the timeline, they happen, sometimes sooner, sometimes later, but always inevitable. This realization drives Doom deeper into madness. He tells himself that if every branch is doomed to collapse, then survival depends not on preserving the multiverse, but on becoming its architect. Only he, with his fusion of magic and science, can shape the rebirth. But the multiverse has a way of fighting back. In one dream walk, Doom crosses paths with a sorcerer he didn't expect. Doctor Strange. Not the Strange of his own altered world, but a variant from another branch. Strange, who has seen the chaos of the Darkhold and knows the dangers of meddling too deeply, recognizes Doom for what he is becoming. They clash across the dreamscape, their battle echoing through shattered realities. Doom accuses Strange of hypocrisy, claiming he too bends the rules to protect what he loves. Strange counters by warning Doom that his arrogance will doom not just one world, but all worlds. And though neither can fully defeat the other, Doom emerges from the encounter more determined than ever. To him, Strange's warning isn't a deterrent, it's validation. If even the Sorcerer Supreme fears what Doom might accomplish, then Doom must be on the right path. Back in his own reality, Doom doubles down. He scours every scrap of knowledge he can find, from ancient texts buried beneath Kamaraj to lost scrolls hidden in the ruins of Suya. He learns of the incursion cycle, universes colliding, annihilating one another until only fragments remain. And here's the twist. Doom discovers that incursions aren't random. They're drawn to anomalies, to points where the natural order has been disrupted. And who is the greatest anomaly of all? Steve Rogers. Not because he fought Hydra, not because he lived with Peggy, but because he came from a different branch and imposed his will on a world that wasn't his. Doom concludes that if Rogers hadn't interfered, this version of reality would never have fractured. That makes Steve both the cause and the key, the ultimate paradox. At this point, Doom's resentment becomes personal. He no longer views Steve as just a variable in a cosmic equation, he sees him as the thief who stole his destiny. In Doom's mind, Steve's selfish decision to live his dream with Peggy erased the possibility of Tony Stark becoming a hero. It robbed Doom of his chance to be more than a monster. If Steve had stayed in his lane, Victor might have grown up loved, protected, guided into greatness. Instead, he was abandoned, burned, twisted into a ruler who never asked for his crown. This is where Doom's narrative shifts from a tragic backstory into a vendetta. He vows that if he can't undo Steve's choice, then he'll reshape the multiverse itself. So no man, no god, no Avenger can ever alter destiny again. The Baron declares Agatha a witch, branding her sorcery as evil. In a public spectacle meant to crush both her spirit and Victor's, she is sentenced to death by fire. And here's the gut-wrenching part. Victor tries to save her. Against her wishes, he unleashes spells she had forbidden him to use. He throws himself into the flames, desperate to pull her out, but he fails. The fire consumes her. His skin is seared again, his heart shattered once more. In the ashes of that failure, Victor Von Doom is truly born. He builds his first armor, a cold metal shell to hide his scars infused with both magic and machinery. And with it, he turns the Baron's punishment back on him. The same fire that killed Agatha consumes Latvaria's tyrant. The people cheer, they see Doom as their liberator. But deep inside, Victor doesn't feel like a hero. He feels like a man who has lost everything twice. Music. This is the turning point. Up to now, Victor was still someone who could have been saved. He was a boy who wanted to protect, who wanted to give. But grief twists even the noblest souls. In his rage, he convinces himself that only by seizing absolute power can he prevent such losses from happening again. And so he doesn't just rule Latvaria, he rebuilds it in his image. He fuses magic with technology, creating the first wave of Doombots. Machines powered by energy not from this world, but siphoned from forbidden realms. The land prospers, but its prosperity is built on unstable foundations. And that's when a familiar figure notices the Ancient One. The Ancient One feels a disturbance. She confronts Doom, warning him that his experiments are destabilizing the natural balance. She senses that the energy he's tapping into could unravel the very fabric of their universe. But Doom, emboldened by grief and power, mocks her. He calls her a hypocrite. After all, isn't she herself guilty of drawing energy from the dark dimension to prolong her life? Their clash is inevitable. Sorcerer Supreme against Latvaria's armored sorcerer engineer. And though the Ancient One is formidable, Doom does something no one else ever dared. He doesn't just fight her. He absorbs her power, just as he once absorbed Agatha's teachings. For the first time in centuries, the Ancient One finds herself outmatched, not by brute force, but by a mind that combines logic with mysticism. Unable to destroy him without devastating consequences, she leaves him with a warning. If you ever step outside Latveria, our next meeting will be our last. Doom's reply is chilling in its certainty. Indeed, it will be our last. Meanwhile, in the broader world, Steve Rogers is living a quieter life. His intervention created a strange peace. With Hydra dismantled early, with Doom locked away in Latveria, governments stabilize, wars fade. Conflicts that once birthed heroes never come to pass. It's almost idyllic, almost too good to be true. But this peace isn't natural, it's the product of Steve's interference. And when Peggy Carter eventually passes away, Steve feels the pull of his original timeline. Old and weary, he returns with his shield, handing the mantle to Sam Wilson. To everyone else, it looks like a peaceful ending to a noble life. But in truth, the moment Steve leaves that altered reality, something snaps. The delicate balance begins to collapse. Doom, who has spent years tethering his world together with stolen energy, feels it first. He realizes that the true anomaly wasn't the stones or Hydra or even himself. It was Steve Rogers, a man who didn't belong, who brought peace to a world that should have birthed chaos. And when that man departs, the incursions begin. This is where Doom's genius turns into obsession. He refuses to accept that the multiverse itself is broken because of someone else's choices. He tells himself he can fix it. He builds machines. He crafts spells. He sends Doombots into other realms to harvest energy. But no matter what he does, the incursions keep happening. Timelines collapse, universes burn, and slowly Doom arrives at a terrifying conclusion that the multiverse isn't a garden to be nurtured, but a cancer to be replaced. If collapse is inevitable, then the only way forward is to control the collapse to trigger it on his own terms, and from its ashes, build a new reality where he reigns supreme. It's not that Doom seeks destruction for its own sake. He seeks order, permanence, a world where no fire can ever take away what he loves again. But in trying to play God, he sets himself on the path of becoming the very monster he once swore to fight. Doom's obsession with saving his reality evolves into something far greater than even he anticipated. At first, he tries to focus on his own world, using his Doombots to siphon energy from other realms. These machines, half metal and half magic, act as anchors, patching the cracks left by Steve's departure. But here's the problem. Every time one fracture is sealed, another appears elsewhere. It's like playing whack-a-mole with existence itself. Doom begins to notice a strange pattern. No matter what he does, the source of instability always traces back to one thing: Steve Rogers. Not the Captain America of Doom's timeline, but the Steve who came from another world, who lived decades of borrowed time with Peggy before finally returning home. Doom realizes something devastating. Steve wasn't just a visitor, he was an infection in the timeline. His presence created peace where there should have been conflict. And when he left, that peace collapsed, sending shockwaves through the multiverse. For Doom, this isn't just a theory, it's proof that destiny itself was rewritten, and he's living in the fallout. Armed with this revelation, Doom turns his attention to the concept of dream walking, the forbidden practice of projecting oneself into variants across the multiverse. Using fragments of the Darkhold in his own inventions, he sends his consciousness spiraling into alternate worlds. In one, he sees Howard Stark alive and well, never betrayed, never killed in Latveria. In another, Tony grows into Iron Man, the genius hero who saves New York from an alien invasion, instead of hiding in armor and sorcery. Each reality shows him a different possibility, a different outcome. And yet, one thing remains constant: the incursions. No matter the timeline, they happen, sometimes sooner, sometimes later, but always inevitable. This realization drives Doom deeper into madness. He tells himself that if every branch is doomed to collapse, then survival depends not on preserving the multiverse, but on becoming its architect. Only he, with his fusion of magic and science, can shape the rebirth. But the multiverse has a way of fighting back. In one dream walk, Doom crosses paths with a sorcerer he didn't expect: Doctor Strange. Not the Strange of his own altered world, but a variant from another branch. Strange, who has seen the chaos of the Darkhold and knows the dangers of meddling too deeply, recognizes Doom for what he is becoming. They clash across the dreamscape, their battle echoing through shattered realities. Doom accuses Strange of hypocrisy, claiming he too bends the rules to protect what he loves. Strange counters by warning Doom that his arrogance will doom not just one world but all worlds. And though neither can fully defeat the other, Doom emerges from the encounter more determined than ever. To him, Strange's warning isn't a deterrent, it's validation. If even the Sorcerer Supreme fears what Doom might accomplish, then Doom must be on the right path. Back in his own reality, Doom doubles down. He scours every scrap of knowledge he can find, from ancient texts buried beneath Kamaraj to lost scrolls hidden in the ruins of Suya. He learns of the incursion cycle, universes colliding, annihilating one another until only fragments remain. And here's the twist. Doom discovers that incursions aren't random. They're drawn to anomalies, to points where the natural order has been disrupted. And who is the greatest anomaly of all? Steve Rogers. Not because he fought Hydra, not because he lived with Peggy, but because he came from a different branch and imposed his will on a world that wasn't his. Doom concludes that if Rogers hadn't interfered, this version of reality would never have fractured. That makes Steve both the cause and the key, the ultimate paradox. At this point, Doom's resentment becomes personal. He no longer views Steve as just a variable in a cosmic equation, he sees him as the thief who stole his destiny. In Doom's mind, Steve's selfish decision to live his dream with Peggy erased the possibility of Tony Stark becoming a hero. It robbed Doom of his chance to be more than a monster. If Steve had stayed in his lane, Victor might have grown up loved, protected, guided into greatness. Instead, he was abandoned, burned, twisted into a ruler who never asked for his crown. This is where Doom's narrative shifts from a tragic backstory into a vendetta. He vows that if he can't undo Steve's choice, then he'll reshape the multiverse itself. So no man, no god, no Avenger can ever alter destiny again. But Doom isn't reckless. He knows striking directly at Steve would unravel him as well. Because in this altered world, Victor only exists because Steve chose to stay. To erase Steve would be to erase himself. So Doom turns his genius toward a different solution: control. He builds devices capable of harnessing the residual energy of incursions, attempting to bend those collapses to his will. He theorizes that if he can capture enough of this destructive power, he can ignite what he calls the last incursion, a controlled collapse of all timelines, after which he alone will decide what survives. His dream isn't annihilation for its own sake, it's rebirth, a universe forged by his design. Where no child suffers as he did, where no tyrant burns witches, where no Steve Rogers rewrites destiny, but beneath that noble veneer lies his darker truth. In that new reality, Doom will be worshipped, not questioned, and yet even Doom can't escape doubt. During his dream walks, he begins to witness fragments of futures not yet written. He sees universes where heroes still rise, where hope flourishes even in chaos. He sees Tony Stark sacrificing himself for the greater good. He sees Wanda Maximoff torn between love and destruction. He sees King the Conqueror looming like a shadow over everything. Each vision leaves Doom conflicted. Is he truly the savior he believes himself to be, or just another tyrant grasping at control? The irony is almost poetic. In trying to correct the fracture Steve caused, Doom risks becoming the very embodiment of the multiverse's corruption. But in his mind, the choice has already been made. He cannot turn back. The collapse is coming, and when it does, only one man will be prepared to stand atop the ashes. And so Doom begins the final stage of his plan. He stops merely reacting to incursions and starts initiating them. Targeted, calculated, deliberate. He chooses universes that threaten his own stability, wiping them away with cold precision. To the outside observer, it looks like cruelty. To Doom, it's mercy. Better to prune a world than let it rot and drag others down with it. But every act of destruction feeds the myth of Doom, the legend of a man who plays God. Across the multiverse, whispers spread of a ruler cloaked in green and iron, wielding both sorcery and science, bending reality itself. Some fear him, some worship him, but all know his name, Dr. Doom. The legend of Doom doesn't stay confined to Latveria for long. His incursions send ripples through the fabric of reality, drawing attention from forces far beyond his world. Sorcerers across dimensions whisper of a tyrant harvesting destruction itself. Cosmic entities sense the imbalance, and even king variants begin to take notice. Doom's campaign isn't just a defense mechanism anymore. It's an outright declaration of dominance over the multiverse. Every universe he targets, every Earth he topples adds to his arsenal. And in the process, Doom starts to uncover a chilling truth. Some timelines contain fragments of knowledge the others don't. By piecing them together, Doom begins to map the architecture of the multiverse itself, something even the TVA barely understood. For him, the puzzle isn't random chaos anymore. It's a machine, flawed but decipherable. And if he can decode its design, he can rebuild it. But Doom's rise doesn't go unchallenged. The Sorcerer Supreme of several branches form a coalition. Recognizing that no one timeline can survive his ambitions, they send emissaries, warriors, even variants of Strange and Wong to confront him. The battles that follow aren't just magical duels. They're cataclysms that shake entire continents. Doom doesn't merely fight them off, he learns from them. Every spell cast against him becomes a new formula in his arsenal. Every weapon wielded against him becomes a blueprint for his Doombots. What makes him so terrifying isn't just his power, but his adaptability. He turns resistance into resource. And after every confrontation, he emerges stronger, colder, more convinced of his destiny. To Doom, opposition isn't a threat. It's proof that the multiverse fears the change he's about to bring. Meanwhile, Doom's vendetta against Steve Rogers furs in the background. Even though Steve has long since returned to his own timeline, his ghost haunts Doom's every calculation. Doom convinces himself that Rogers was the original sin, the ripple that started it all. And so Doom begins experimenting with ways to reach across branches, not just dreamwalking, but dragging physical matter through. He's no longer content to observe variants, he wants to confront them. In one experiment, he pulls through a fragment of a shield cracked and scarred belonging to a Steve Rogers who died in battle. In another, he glimpses universes where Rogers never became Captain America at all. Each revelation hardens his result. If anomalies like Steve can exist and rewrite fate, then Doom's crusade isn't just justified, it's necessary. He frames it as cosmic justice. One man rewrote destiny for love, so another must rewrite it for survival. But the more Doom tampers, the more the multiverse begins to convulse. Incursions accelerate. Timelines grind against each other. Entire branches collapse faster than he can catalog them. In the chaos, he stumbles upon something unexpected. Fragments of universes that resist erasure, fragments tethered by infinity stones. Unlike the ones Steve returned, these are from alternate realities where the stones weren't destroyed. Doom realizes they act like anchors, stabilizing their timelines against collapse. To him, this isn't coincidence, it's confirmation. If he can gather these variants of the stones, he might wield enough power to not only control the collapse, but to reshape reality itself. It's a temptation even Doom can't resist. Thus begins his next campaign, not just to survive incursions, but to hunt the multiverse's most powerful relics one by one. This hunt leads Doom into direct conflict with heroes from other worlds. On one Earth, he faces a variant of Thor who never lost Mjolnir, a god who fights with the fury of storms. Doom defeats him by binding the lightning to his armor, absorbing the storm itself. On another, he battles a Carol Danvers who never abandoned her world, a Captain Marvel variant radiating cosmic power. Their clash spans galaxies, but Doom's mixture of sorcery and technology tips the scale. He doesn't just overpower her, he imprisons her energy inside a device. A cruel echo of the arc reactor Tony once carried in another life. Every victory adds to his arsenal, but every act of conquest leaves another universe in ruins. Doom tells himself it's necessary, but deep inside he knows he's becoming the very embodiment of the destruction he claims to prevent. At the same time, whispers of Doom's campaign reach the surviving Avengers across other timelines. Some of them piece together fragments of what's happening, that a tyrant born from Tony Stark's shadow is waging war on the multiverse itself. Imagine the emotional weight of that revelation. Variants of Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, and even Tony himself begin to confront the possibility that one of their own has become the greatest villain of all. For Steve variants, the guilt is crushing. Was it really their fault? Was the decision of one man to live a quiet life enough to spark universal collapse? For Tony variants, the horror cuts even deeper. Doom is in some twisted sense a Tony who never had the chance to atone, never had the chance to be a hero, now rewriting the cosmos in iron and fire. It's not just a fight for survival anymore. It's a fight for their very legacy. As Doom's legend spreads, so does his paranoia. He begins to sense that heroes across branches are preparing to resist him, maybe even unite against him. For all his arrogance, he isn't blind to the risk. So, he accelerates his timetable. He pushes the multiverse toward its breaking point, orchestrating collisions, not randomly, but strategically, pruning the branches that could birth the strongest opposition. And yet, the more he pushes, the more he realizes he's running out of time. The incursions are accelerating beyond his control. He can't just patch the machine anymore. He has to rebuild it now, or everything will be lost. This is the stage where Doom's crusade stops being theoretical. He's no longer preparing for the last incursion. He's summoning it. And in doing so, he sets the stage for the greatest catastrophe the multiverse has ever seen. The multiverse groans under the weight of Doom's ambition. By this stage, every branch is fraying. Every reality feels like it's seconds from unraveling. And in the heart of Latvia, Doom stands within his citadel, surrounded by towers of technology humming with stolen cosmic energy. He has harvested fragments of infinity stones from shattered universes, fused them into his armor, and built a machine capable of triggering what he calls the final incursion. To him, this isn't madness, it's destiny. He believes the multiverse is sick, corrupted by anomalies, plagued by accidents of love and sacrifice, and that only by collapsing everything can a new order emerge. But what makes this moment so powerful is the contradiction. Doom sees himself as savior, yet his empire is built on ashes. His dream is a world without loss, yet he has become the embodiment of loss itself. As Doom prepares to ignite his machine, resistance gathers. From across collapsing branches, heroes converge, not a single team, but countless variations of the Avengers, each pulled into the storm of incursions. Imagine Steve Rogers stepping onto the battlefield alongside other versions of himself, each one scarred by different choices. Imagine Tony Stark's facing the horror of seeing what they could have become if they'd been stripped of hope. Natasha, Thor, Wanda, Strange. Countless faces, countless versions of legacy. They don't arrive united by command or strategy. They arrive bound by one truth. If Doom succeeds, there won't be a multiverse left to fight for. This is the war of survival, the final battle to preserve possibility itself. And in the middle of this confrontation lies the cruel irony. Doom doesn't want to kill them. In his mind, they are the proof of what he's fighting for. But because they resist, because they cling to the chaos of choice, he sees no alternative. His Doom bots flood the field. Armored legions powered by the energy of dead universes. The skies burn with sorcery and machinery, a fusion of cosmic and arcane unlike anything the multiverse has ever seen. Each hero throws themselves into the fray, but for every victory, Doom adapts. Every shield strike, every spell, every blast becomes data absorbed into his armor turned against them. It's not just a battle of fists, it's a battle of wills. Can the idea of freedom withstand the sheer weight of one man's obsession with control? And then in the chaos comes the most shocking confrontation of all. Doom stands face to face with Steve Rogers. Not the old man who returned to his timeline, but a variant dragged into the collapse, still carrying the guilt of choices made and lives altered. Doom doesn't attack immediately. Instead, he speaks. He tells Steve that everything, the incursions, the deaths, the collapse, began with him. That his selfish choice to stay with Peggy, to rewrite destiny for love, created the fracture that doomed them all. Steve, battle-worn and weary, doesn't deny it. He admits that maybe his choice was selfish, maybe it was wrong, but he refuses to believe that one mistake justifies burning the multiverse to the ground. This exchange is more than dialogue, it's the essence of the theory. Doom sees Steve as the anomaly that broke everything, while Steve sees Doom as the consequence of letting anger rewrite purpose. The fight that follows is as symbolic as it is brutal. Doom, armored in a fusion of stark genius and sorcery, wielding fragments of stones, embodies power twisted by grief. Steve, shield in hand, embodies resilience born of sacrifice. Every clash of metal and magic is a clash of ideologies. Doom shouts that destiny must be controlled, that chaos must be purged. Steve counters with the belief that freedom, even with its risks, is what makes existence worth preserving. The outcome isn't determined by who's stronger. Doom clearly has the advantage, but by who inspires those around them. Watching Steve stand against impossible odds, other heroes rally. They begin to see that even if Doom's theory is correct, his solution strips the multiverse of its very soul. But here's the twist that seals the climax. Just as Doom is about to deliver the final blow, his machine designed to harness the collapse begins to overload. The very incursion energy he sought to control turns volatile, threatening to consume not just the battlefield, but reality itself. Doom faces a choice eerily similar to Tony's in Endgame: sacrifice himself to stop the collapse, or cling to his dream and risk annihilating everything. For the briefest moment, the man inside the armor resurfaces. The boy Victor, who lost his parents, who lost Agatha, who never got to be Tony Stark. That sliver of humanity is enough. Doom diverts the energy inward, containing the blast within his armor. The explosion rips through Latveria, sealing the final incursion and stabilizing the multiverse, but at the cost of Doom himself, or so it seems. The heroes stand in the aftermath, battered but alive. The multiverse doesn't collapse. Instead, it shudders, scarred but stable. Like a patient who just barely survived surgery, Steve Rogers lowers his shield, burdened by the knowledge that his decision all those years ago set the dominoes in motion. But even here, amidst ruin, there's hope. The theory suggests that Doom isn't truly gone. His essence, infused with the energy of the stones and the incursions, may still linger, waiting for the right moment to rise again. And that sets the stage for what could become Marvel's most terrifying villain. Not Kang, not Thanos, but Doom. A Doom who knows the multiverse's secrets. Who has seen its fragility. Who understands that one man's choice can alter destiny itself. So, what does it all mean? At its heart, this theory reframes the multiverse saga as a story not just about Kang or alternate branches, but about consequences, about how one decision made with the purest of intentions can ripple into catastrophe. Steve Rogers wasn't evil for staying with Peggy, but in doing so, he planted the seed of a reality where Tony Stark never became Iron Man, where Victor Von Doom was born instead. And Doom, in trying to save his broken world, nearly broke the multiverse. It's a cycle of cause and effect, love and loss, heroism and villain. And it shows that the line between savior and destroyer is thinner than we ever imagined. And that brings me to you. What do you think of this theory? Do you see the irony the same way I do? That Steve's most human choice created Marvel's most inhuman villain? Does it make Avengers Endgame feel less like an ending and more like the beginning of something far darker? And if Doom really is the shadow born of Steve's ripple, does that make him the true heart of the multiverse saga? Let me know in the comments, because this is one of those theories that only gets stronger the more minds dig into it. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with your fellow fans, and of course, subscribe to MovieCast for more theories that peel back the layers of your favorite. I love how poetic this setup is, because the void is both an ending and a beginning. It's the graveyard of pruned timelines, but it's also the birthplace of new crossovers. Deadpool and Wolverine are the first ones we'll see crawl out of it, but the implications are massive. If the void is the dumping ground of every timeline the TVA prunes, then that means entire universes like the Fox X-Men films, the 2000s Fantastic Four, even alternate Spider-Man, all of them exist somewhere in that wasteland, and if they exist, they can be found. Deadpool with his chaotic energy is the one reckless enough to poke around and pull those pieces into the main story. Wolverine with his survivor's instinct is the one tough enough to endure it. Together, they're the spark that lights the fire for mutants in the MCU. And it makes sense, Endgame ended with the Avengers fractured and smaller than ever. Doomsday needs to build a bigger army. Deadpool and Wolverine are Marvel's way of saying the cavalry is coming, but they won't look like the Avengers, you know. Which brings me to the Fantastic Four. Unlike the X-Men who enter through the chaos of the void, the Fantastic Four will take a different path. One rooted in science, exploration, and discovery. Reed Richards isn't just a genius. He's one of the only minds in the Marvel Universe capable of understanding how fragile the multiverse really is. In the comics, Reed often becomes the voice of reason in multiversal conflicts, warning that unchecked experiments lead to collapse. Now, imagine him entering the MCU right after Endgame cracks begin to spread. Steve Rogers' choice fractured time. Loki saw the TVA crumble. Deadpool and Wolverine dragged mutant universes into the chaos. And then Reed Richards shows up pointing out that this isn't random, it's systemic. The multiverse isn't bending, it's breaking, and someone is pushing it toward collapse. That's when Dr. Doom comes into the picture. Because Doom isn't just a villain, he's the kind of man who thrives in collapse. It's worth pausing on Reed Richards here, because his arrival fundamentally changes the scope of the MCU. Up until now, the Avengers have been warriors. They've solved problems with strength, sacrifice, and courage. But Reed is a builder, a thinker, a man who sees patterns others miss. When he enters the multiverse mess, he's not going to punch his way through it. He's going to dissect it. He'll be the one connecting Steve's timeline anomaly, Loki's survival, the TVA's collapse, the Void's secrets, and the arrival of mutants. He'll see the threads that tie them together, and he'll recognize Doom's fingerprints before anyone else. Because in the comics, Doom and Reed aren't just enemies, they're mirrors. One represents science for discovery, the other science for domination, which means the moment Reed arrives, Doom's rise isn't far behind. Endgame gave us cracks, the Void gave us chaos. But Reed's discovery will give us clarity. And clarity is what makes Doom truly dangerous. So, let's tie this back to Endgame for a moment. Why does Marvel keep looping us back to that film as the start of everything? Because it was never the end. Every choice made there echoes outward. Steve choosing love over duty. Loki dying a hero but surviving as a variant, the TVA pruning but never truly erasing, the Void filling up with discarded universes, Deadpool and Wolverine finding a way back, the Fantastic Four stepping in with answers. When you look at all of that, Endgame starts to feel less like closure and more like ignition. It's the spark. Doomsday is the explosion. And in the space between those 2 points lies the multiverse slowly unraveling, waiting for someone like Doom to exploit it. That's why when I think of Endgame now, I don't just see Tony's sacrifice or Steve's dance, I see the dominoes falling one by one, leading straight into a future where everything Avengers, mutants, explorers, gods has to collide just to survive. And this is where things start to get exciting because now we can begin asking the bigger questions. What role does Loki's sacrifice play in stabilizing or destabilizing the multiverse? How will the TVA's collapse create opportunities for heroes and villains alike? How will Deadpool and Wolverine's chaotic energy merge with the more serious tones of the Avengers? And what exactly will Reed Richards discover that points directly to Doom? These are random teases, they're threads Marvel is weaving carefully, all anchored to that ending in Endgame. The genius of it is that we thought Endgame was final, but the truth is, it was just the first page of Doomsday's story. Loki's journey after Endgame is one of the most fascinating arcs in the entire Marvel universe because it reframes his role from a trickster side character into something far greater. In Infinity War, Loki's death gave us closure on his story. The villain turned reluctant hero cut down by Thanos before the real battle even began. But when his 2012 variant escaped in Endgame, we got a version of Loki who hadn't grown yet, a Loki still arrogant and hungry for power. The TVA turned that Loki into something else entirely, a god who could finally see beyond himself. And when he took his final step in Loki Season 2, choosing to sacrifice his freedom to hold the threads of the multiverse together, he became something none of us saw. This is critical because in Avengers Doomsday, Loki isn't just another character returning. He's the living embodiment of the multiverse's survival. Every branch, every world, every hero that exists owes its survival to him. That means when the multiverse begins collapsing into Doomsday, Loki's sacrifice is either going to be tested, corrupted, or broken. And if it breaks, everything Endgame tried to save will unravel. The TVA, meanwhile, becomes the battlefield no one expected. It shows us that time isn't math, it's politics, it's control, and the moment he who remains is killed, that control evaporates. Suddenly, all the timelines Steve Rogers and the Avengers bent and twisted are no longer being pruned. They're free, but freedom comes with a cost: chaos. The TVA's collapse means every happy ending from Endgame, Steve's dance, Loki's survival, even Tony's peace is destabilized, because without a sacred timeline, there's no guarantee those endings hold, and when the TVA falls apart, it becomes a vacuum. Power like that doesn't go unclaimed. That's where Kang, his variants, and eventually Doom step in. Endgame thought the war was over, but the TVA reveals it was just paused. The real war is the one for time itself, and in Doomsday, we'll see that fight consume every hero we've come to know. Now, into this chaos stumble the two least likely saviors, Deadpool and Wolverine. It's almost absurd when you think about it. Endgame gave us operatic closure, tearful sacrifices, and grand finales. Wolverine, a grizzled mutant who just wants peace. But that's the genius of it. Deadpool doesn't respect rules. Not cinematic rules, not narrative rules, not even the rules of time. He's exactly the kind of character who would wander into the TVA's void, poke at the cracks, and drag forgotten universes back into the light. And Wolverine is the anchor, the reminder that no matter how chaotic Deadpool is, the X-Men universe has weight, tragedy, and heart. When the two of them collide with the fallout of Endgame timeline chaos, they won't just be comedy relief, they'll be the bridge. They'll drag mutants into the same story where Avengers and the TVA are fighting for survival. And suddenly, Endgame's quiet ending looks like the first domino in a storm that even Tony Stark couldn't have calculated. The symbolism of Deadpool and Wolverine entering through the void is one of my favorite storytelling choices Marvel has made. Think about it, the void is where broken timelines go to die. It's the place where the TVA dumps anything it can't control. And yet, from that graveyard comes resurrection. Deadpool and Wolverine walking out of the void is Marvel's way of saying nothing is really gone. The Fox X-Men films we thought were over, they're not. The alternate Fantastic Four we thought were buried, they're not. Even universes that seemed irrelevant can claw their way back when the multiverse cracks wide open. And this is exactly the kind of chaotic energy that makes Doomsday inevitable. Because once Deadpool and Wolverine prove that discarded timelines can return, what stops every other universe from doing the same? That's not just messy, it's catastrophic. The void isn't a dumping ground anymore, it's a door, and in Doomsday that door won't stay closed. And here's where the mutants' arrival becomes more than just a cameo. In Endgame, the Avengers saved their universe, but Doomsday isn't about saving a single world, it's about saving all of them. That means the Avengers can't do it alone. They need numbers, powers, and perspectives they've never had before. Enter the X-Men. Deadpool and Wolverine are just the first crack. Once the mutants enter the MCU proper, the floodgates open. Suddenly, Endgame's version of everyone is here during the final battle against Thanos feels small. Imagine Doomsday, not just Avengers running through portals, but mutants, variants, alternate universes, Fantastic Four explorers, even villains forced into uneasy alliances. Endgame was the climax of one saga. Doomsday is the collapse of all sagas, folding in on each other, and the mutants aren't guests in that story. They're reinforcements. Without them, the Avengers are hopelessly outnumbered. With them, they stand a chance if they can trust each other. Which brings us back to the Fantastic Four because their arrival is timed perfectly. Deadpool and Wolverine bring chaos. Mutants bring scale, but the Fantastic Four bring understanding. Reed Richards is the one who's going to look at the chaos and actually map it. In Endgame, Bruce Banner explained time travel like a scientist. But Reed will explain the multiverse like a cartographer mapping a collapsing world. He'll see the patterns no one else can. He'll see how Steve Rogers' branch with Peggy isn't just a romantic choice, but the first destabilizing crack. He'll see how Loki's sacrifice at the end of his series holds the timelines together, but barely. He'll see how the TVA's collapse left the void overflowing with discarded universes. And he'll be the one to say, this isn't random. Someone is orchestrating this collapse. That someone, of course, is Dr. Doom. And the second Reed says his name, Doomsday stops being abstract. It becomes personal because Doom isn't just a villain who takes advantage of chaos. He's a man who wants to build a new world on the ashes of the old. And that's the transition we're heading toward. Endgame gave us heroes winning the war at impossible cost. Doomsday is going to give us heroes realizing that their greatest victories planted the seeds of their greatest defeat. Steve's choice, Loki's death, Deadpool's irreverence, Wolverine's tragedy, Reed's discovery. All of them are dominoes tipping toward the same conclusion. And in the middle of it all is Doom, waiting, patient, ready to turn Endgame's cracks into his empire. That's why when I think about the flow of these films, I don't see Endgame as an ending anymore. I see it as a prologue. The war hasn't been won, it hasn't even started. And when Doomsday comes, it won't just test, because if they can't stop Doom, then Endgame wasn't a victory. It was the setup for the darkest chapter the MCU has ever seen. The moment the mutants and Fantastic Four begin to share the same stage as the Avengers, the MCU stops feeling like a series of connected franchises and starts feeling like a living, breathing multiverse. Think about Endgame's finale. Portals opening, armies clashing, every Avenger side by side. Now amplify that to a cosmic scale. Instead of portals just opening across Wakanda or Titan, imagine entire universes colliding, broken timelines spilling into each other like floodwaters. That's what the build-up to Doomsday is pointing toward. The X-Men don't arrive quietly. Their history, their enemies, their pain, all come with them. The Fantastic Four don't step in as rookies either. They arrive as explorers who have already touched the fabric of alternate realities. And suddenly, the Avengers aren't the leaders anymore. They're one piece of a puzzle far bigger than anything Tony, Steve, or Natasha ever imagined. That shift from Avengers as the center to Avengers as one faction is what makes Doomsday feel inevitable. Because in a war for the multiverse, no one team gets to sit at the top. And yet with new blood comes new friction. The X-Men aren't soldiers trained to follow Captain America's orders. They are persecuted people who have fought wars of survival on their own turf for decades. When they step into the Avengers world, it won't be seamless unity. It will be distrust, conflicting philosophies, and personal grudges bleeding into the battlefield. Imagine Wolverine's skepticism toward anyone claiming leadership. Imagine Cyclops' resentment of human heroes who only now notice mutants when the multiverse is falling apart. Imagine Storm, Magneto, and others who will see the chaos not as a tragedy, but as a chance to rewrite the rules entirely. The Fantastic Four, meanwhile, operate differently too. They're a family before they're a team. Their loyalty isn't to an organization, it's to each other. When Reed Richards warns of doom, when Sue insists on prioritizing family over strangers, when Johnny and Ben clash with egos like Thor or Hulk, these conflicts won't destroy the alliance, but they will fracture it, and Doom thrives on fractures. Endgame taught us heroes unite when pushed hard enough. Doomsday will teach us what happens when too many egos, too many traumas, and too many worlds collide. This is exactly why the multiverse war feels so much darker than Endgame's Infinity Saga. In Endgame, Thanos was a single enemy with a single goal. He was ruthless, but at least his mission was clear. In Doomsday, there isn't just one enemy, there's the collapse itself, universes bleeding into each other, rules of physics bending. Characters pulled from realities where they were heroes into ones where they're villains. The war isn't just against the person, it's against entropy. Doom, of course, becomes the opportunist in that storm, but the chaos is already happening before he strikes. That means every hero is fighting on two fronts, against the collapse and against Doom. And the worst part, many of them won't realize which is which until it's too late. Endgame was hard because Tony had to sacrifice himself. Doomsday will be harder because the battlefield itself is collapsing beneath everyone's feet. And if we look closely, the seeds of Doom's rise have been planted in plain sight. Endgame showed us heroes rewriting destiny, bending rules to achieve a happy ending. But villains like Doom see those bends as opportunities. Steve Rogers choosing Peggy wasn't just romantic. To Doom, it was proof that the strongest Avenger could be swayed by personal desire. Loki's sacrifice wasn't just noble. To Doom, it was proof that gods could trap themselves in eternal prisons if pushed the right way. Deadpool and Wolverine dragging the Fox universes into play wasn't just chaotic. To Doom, it was proof that discarded realities could be weaponized. And Reed Richards discovering the truth wasn't just intellectual curiosity. To Doom, it was an invitation. Every step in Endgame's fallout created a lesson Doom can twist. That's what makes him so terrifying. He doesn't need to break the rules. He just needs to wait for heroes to do it themselves, then step into the cracks they leave behind. When the Fantastic Four enter the picture, the dynamic changes even more dramatically. Reed Richards will recognize Doom long before the Avengers or X-Men understand who he is. Their rivalry isn't just personal, it's cosmic. Reed represents hope that knowledge can save the multiverse. Doom represents the certainty that knowledge can control it. That ideological clash is bigger than Tony versus Thanos because it isn't about stopping destruction. It's about who gets to rebuild. The X-Men will be torn between trusting Reed's optimism and siding with Doom's pragmatism. The Avengers will be caught in the middle, unsure whether Doom is just another tyrant or someone who actually has the power to stabilize what they can't. And this is where Doomsday becomes dangerous. Because unlike Thanos, who snapped half the universe into dust, Doom offers a deal. He offers survival in exchange for surrender. And in a collapsing multiverse, that temptation is stronger than any Infinity Stone. Here's the chilling part. The multiverse doesn't collapse all at once. It starts slowly. Branches disappear. Worlds overlap. Small anomalies, a mutant in the wrong world, a Fantastic Four variant lost in the wrong timeline become more frequent. At first, the Avengers think they can fix it. Reed thinks he can calculate it. Loki thinks he can hold it, but piece by piece, the collapse accelerates, and every time they fail, Doom looks more like the answer. In Endgame, the fight was about hope versus despair. In Doomsday, the fight is about control versus chaos. And if we've learned anything from Marvel's storytelling, it's that chaos always wins in the short term. That's why Doom's rise feels inevitable, not because he's stronger, but because the battlefield itself tilts in his favor. Every mistake, every fracture, every ego clash among the heroes is another step closer to Doom's throne. So, when we look back at Endgame in light of this, it's almost haunting. That final shot of Steve dancing with Peggy feels warm, nostalgic, peaceful. But now it feels like the first domino. It feels like the choice that cracked the sacred timeline just wide enough for all of this to pour out. Endgame was the hero's gift to themselves. Doomsday is the cost of that gift. And as the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Deadpool, Wolverine, Loki, and the remnants of the Avengers all collide in the war for existence, Doom won't be the one chasing power. He'll be the one standing calmly in the eye of the storm, letting everyone else destroy themselves until they finally realize the truth. The end of Endgame was never the end at all, it was the beginning of his reign. The collapse of the multiverse doesn't come with one single cataclysmic event. It comes like 1,000 small cracks spreading at once, each one leading to another fracture, each one spiraling into chaos. That's why in Avengers Doomsday, the battlefield won't look like Wakanda or New York, it will look like everything. Universes overlapping, realities colliding, cities from different timelines fused together into impossible landscapes. It's the MCU's version of Battleworld, a patchwork of broken dimensions stitched together by the only man ruthless enough to turn collapse into creation, Dr. Doom. This is where the payoff hits. Every branch Steve Rogers left behind, every choice Loki made in the TVA, every timeline pruned into the void, every mutant Deadpool and Wolverine dragged into play, every calculation Reed Richards failed to contain, it all leads here. Doom doesn't just exploit the collapse, he becomes the architect of it. He takes the chaos left behind by Endgame and molds it into a throne. Now, picture this. The heroes finally gather. Not just the Avengers we know, but the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, even wildcard players from alternate realities that stumbled through the cracks. On paper, this sounds unstoppable, an army unlike anything Endgame ever assembled, but unity isn't easy. Old grudges flare. Philosophies clash. Who leads? Is it Sam Wilson carrying Steve's shield? Is it Reed Richards whose genius sees farther than anyone else? Is it Charles Xavier guiding the mutants into a war not of their choosing? Or is it Loki, the god who sacrificed everything to hold the multiverse together? This is where the brilliance of Doomsday lies. The heroes' numbers don't guarantee victory. Their disunity feeds Doom's rise. While they argue, Doom builds. While they fracture, Doom unites his vision. Where Thanos imposed balance by destruction, Doom imposes order by dominion. He offers the multiverse a cruel truth. Only one reality can survive, and under his rule, that reality will be perfect. But this is where Loki's sacrifice becomes the fulcrum of the story. Remember, he's the god of stories now, the one holding the timelines together like threads in a vast loom. In Doomsday, Doom will challenge that directly. He won't just threaten the heroes with armies or weapons. he'll threaten existence itself by ripping those threads from Loki's hands and weaving them into his own design. Imagine the tragedy of it. Loki, who finally found purpose beyond himself, forced to watch as his sacrifice is corrupted. Doom doesn't need to kill Loki. He just needs to repurpose what Loki has built. That's the ultimate inversion of Endgame's legacy. Tony gave his life to save existence. Loki gave his freedom to sustain it. Doom takes both sacrifices and twists them into a weapon for himself. And suddenly, the victory of Endgame looks like the setup for the greatest theft in Marvel history. Doom stealing the multiverse itself. Deadpool and Wolverine, though, bring something unique to this climactic war. They don't fit the mold of noble Avengers or idealistic explorers. They're broken, scarred, and in Deadpool's case, completely unhinged. But that's exactly why they matter. When heroes argue over leadership, Deadpool ignores the rules. When Doom offers temptation, Wolverine sees through it, having lived under tyrants before. Their presence is a reminder that chaos cuts both ways. Doom thrives on it, yes, but so does resistance. Deadpool's unpredictability makes him impossible to control. Wolverine's resilience makes him impossible to break. Together, they represent the wildcard factor, the proof that even in a story where every move seems calculated, there's always room for surprise. And if Doomsday is going to be the climax of everything seated in Endgame, it won't just be Loki's threads or Reed's logic that save the day. It'll also be the sheer unpredictability of characters like Deadpool, who break the narrative itself in order to flip the script. The X-Men's role here is even more profound. For decades in their own universe, they've been fighting to survive, to be accepted, to have a place in the world. Now, in Doomsday, they're thrust into a war that isn't just about their world. It's about all worlds. That shift forces them into a new kind of leadership. Charles Xavier's dream of coexistence becomes tested on a multiversal scale. Magneto's vision of dominance suddenly finds eerie parallels in Doom's philosophy. Cyclops, Storm, Jean, all of them bring perspectives the Avengers never considered, and for once the Avengers aren't the veterans. They're learning from the X-Men who've already lived through extinction-level threats countless times. This is the MCU's way of finally elevating mutants, not as guests, but as equals. Endgame gave the Avengers their victory lap, Doomsday gives the X-Men their battlefield. One where they aren't just backup, but central figures in deciding the fate of everything. And then there's the Fantastic Four. Their presence in Doomsday is different from the X-Men's because they're not fighters by nature, they're explorers. Reed, Sue, Johnny, and Ben represent curiosity, resilience, and the drive to push boundaries. That perspective is essential in a war where boundaries no longer exist. Reed's calculations will reveal what no one else sees, that Doom isn't just building a battle world. He's consolidating realities into a single one, removing anything that doesn't serve his design. Sue will become the heart of the team, grounding the chaos with compassion when other heroes start losing hope. Ben and Johnny will clash with Avengers and mutants alike, but their loyalty to each other will remind the larger group what's at stake: family, survival, and love. That family dynamic becomes the antidote to Doom's cold vision of order, and in the end, that's what the Fantastic Four bring to Doomsday. Not just science, not just power, but humanity in the face of godlike ambition. Now, as all these threads converge, the climax becomes clear. Doom sits on his throne in Battleworld, a reality stitched together from the ashes of Endgame's choices. Loki's sacrifice is strained to the breaking point. Reed Richards recognizes that science alone can't save them. The Avengers realize their unity isn't guaranteed anymore. The X-Men grapple with whether to trust Doom or oppose him. Deadpool and Wolverine are chaos embodied, breaking rules even Doom can't predict. And through it all, the echoes of Endgame hang heavy. Steve's choice with Peggy, Tony's sacrifice, Natasha's fall, Loki's death, the TVA's collapse. None of it was closure, it was the prelude. Doomsday is the price. And the final battle won't just decide who survives. It will decide whether Endgame's sacrifices meant anything at all. The resolution, when it comes, won't be clean. Heroes will fall, worlds will be lost, sacrifices will echo, but the point of Doomsday isn't to erase Endgame's legacy, it's to reframe it. Endgame gave us peace, but fragile peace. Doomsday shows us that peace shattered into war. And when the dust settles, the survivors, Avengers, X-Men, Fantastic Four, Loki, Deadpool, Wolverine will stand together, not because they want to, but because they have to. Doom's defeat, if it comes, won't be total. He'll linger, a shadow across the multiverse. But his rise will forever change how we view Endgame, because what looked like a happy ending was actually the birth of Marvel's darkest chapter. And when the MCU looks back, they'll see the truth. Endgame wasn't the finale, it was the spark. Doomsday is the fire. And that's where this theory lands. Captain America altering the timeline, Loki's death and variant arc, Deadpool and Wolverine tearing open the void, the X-Men and Fantastic Four stepping into the MCU, and Doctor Doom rising from the cracks. All of it connects directly back to Endgame. What we thought was closure was actually the trigger. What we thought was peace was actually the setup for collapse. And what we thought was the end of an era was actually the beginning of Doomsday. The final act of the film would be the rebellion's last, desperate, all-or-nothing gamble. Through immense sacrifice and cunning, perhaps with Loki finally revealing his true, chaotic colors in a spectacular betrayal of Doom that serves his own selfish goals, the tattered resistance would discover the secret heart of Doom's power, the anchor that holds the disparate pieces of Battleworld together. This could be a captured Beyonder's power source, or the harnessed essence of a dead celestial, or the stabilized core of the temporal loom from the TVA. Their mission becomes terrifyingly simple and impossibly difficult: sever the anchor. The final battle wouldn't be on a grassy plain or a city street. It would be fought across the violently unstable landscape of Battleworld itself, with domains crashing together, gravity failing, and the very ground disintegrating beneath their feet. It would be pure, unadulterated, spectacular chaos. The heroes would have to fight their way to the core, facing down Doom's most loyal barons and his own immense, technologically augmented mystical power. The cost would be enormous, and Marvel would have to have the courage to make it feel real. We would see major, permanent sacrifices. Perhaps Thor, in a final glorious act worthy of a king, would channel the full power of the Odin Force to hold back Doom's wrath, knowing it will consume him utterly. Maybe Doctor Strange, in a tragic echo of his Multiverse of Madness variant, would expel every last drop of his magic to create a protective dome around the other heroes, becoming completely mortal and vulnerable, or worse. Finally, against all odds, they would reach the anchor and destroy it. Doom's stolen power shatters, and he falls from his self-made godhood, crashing back to the ground as just a man in iron armor again. But in his fury, his arrogance, and his bitter disappointment, he would trigger a final, spiteful fail. Safe. If he cannot be the god that rules this world, then no one can. Battleworld, deprived of its binding force, begins to implode. It seems ripping apart with the force of a million Big Bangs in reverse. And this, right here, is where the film would end. Not with a celebration, not with a quiet moment of relief, but with a total, absolute cataclysm. As the stitched-together realities fly apart in a storm of dying matter and energy, a mysterious, unseen force, perhaps the true Beyonders finally noticing the anomaly, or a last-ditch, desperate effort from the remains of the Time Variant's authority, sweeps our surviving, horrified heroes away, saving them from immediate annihilation, but hurling them into an unknown, formless void. The last thing we see before the screen cuts to black is Doom himself, adrift in the chaos, his magnificent armor cracked and scorched, but his indomitable will unbroken, bowing into the screaming abyss. This is not the end. Doom endures. It leaves the audience with the chilling, undeniable knowledge that the Avengers failed. They didn't save the multiverse, their actions accelerated its final death, and the only thing that remains is the uncertain, terrifying promise of one final war in the sequel, Secret Wars. It's a devastating, bold, and unforgettable way to end a chapter, ensuring that the stakes for the finale are not just high, but absolute.